Welcome to Brother Miller's Notes. I'm so glad you're with me as together we look at sections 60 to 62 of the Doctrine and Covenants. When a missionary is about to go out, they receive a lot of advice. I mean, just think in your mind for just a minute, what advice would you give a missionary who's about to leave on their mission? One of the things that I've often told the youth in my ward as they've about going on their mission, my advice has been, be the missionary that your mom or dad thinks you are. I have found that if missionaries live up to that expectation, they are truly marvelous missionaries. Well, the background to sections 60 to 62 is we have a group of missionaries who've been serving on a mission. And they've had some challenges. And the Lord's not pleased with some of them. They've not been doing some things right. And so the Lord gives advice to missionaries who are on their missions. And in section 60, some of that advice is very simply, don't forget to open your mouth. Don't hide the talent you've been given because you fear the people around you. You're nervous what you may say or how you may say it. Don't hide the talent because God's given you the ability to preach the gospel. President Hinckley said, as church members, we need to be leaders in this way and share the gospel. He said, quote, "You must be a leader as a member of this church in those causes for which this church stands. Do not let fear overcome your efforts. The adversary of all truth would put into your heart a reluctance to make an effort. Cast that fear aside and be valiant in the cause of truth and righteousness and faith. If you now decide that this will become the pattern of your life, you will not have to make that decision again. Don't be afraid. Open your mouth. Be faithful. Lift up your voice. Declare my word. And don't idle away your time." President Hinckley once again gave advice on this. I am suggesting that we spend a little less time in idleness. In the fruitless pursuits of watching some inane and empty television programs, time so utilized can be better put to advantage. And the consequences will be wonderful. Of that I do not hesitate to assure you. So the Lord says, don't bury the talent you have. I mean, you got that in verse 2, and now it should be actually verse 14. Don't bury your talent. And proclaim the gospel, not in haste, neither in wrath, neither in strife. Don't be doing an argument. Don't be so busy to get somewhere that you forget to say, look around and have a conversation with those who can hear the gospel today. The next section, the Lord gives more advice. Very similar. Don't be so swift to moving back and forth in your life that you forget the people around you to share the gospel with them. President Kimball loved this advice because he's like, we have the same problem today. We're so enamored with getting somewhere that we forget the people around us today to say hi and have a missionary conversation with them. Are we having the same problem today? We're doing that, in our missions. We get on a bus and travel to our field of labor. But what of our neighbors? What of the people along the way? Are we doing it every day on trains, missing those on either side? We travel from Salt Lake City and not feel like missionaries until we get to our field of labor. And so we just go along waiting for our assignment. The president sends us out to work in some distant place, and we're sitting just waiting for the go signal till we get located, taking sometimes days for that. But what's good advice for us is we're on a bus or we're in the check stand line. Don't forget those people before and in front of the line or on either side of us. More advice from missionaries, be unified, be one, be full of faith as you're on your mission, and go 2 by 2. That is the Lord's way, and be of good cheer. And sometimes our days are not very cheerful, but I love Elder Maxwell's just wonderful perspective on this. My brothers and sisters, we're living in a time which we shall see things both wonderful and awful. There is no way that we can be part of these last days and have it otherwise. Even so, we are instructed by our Lord and exemplar, Jesus Christ, to be of good cheer. Jesus has given that same instruction to others before, when the stressful circumstances in which they found themselves were anything but cheerful. And then the quote, he gives a few examples, and I'll put that in my notes online. And then Elder Maxwell concludes, in the late 1820s, Brigham Young, as yet untouched by the restored gospel, was a somewhat discouraged young man. He found himself disapproving of much what he saw in the world and wondering if he had work yet to do. His loving brother Phineas gave Brigham precedent counsel. Hang on, for I know the Lord is going to do something for us. What then happened is Moses-like history. More advice to missionaries, gird up your loins. That's the part where you just symbolically, you got to get going. You got to be active. You got to be prepared to move. And you got to pray always. In section 62, the Lord adds a few more. Be willing to share your testimony. You got to share it with those around you. Assemble together and help people assemble together. Rejoice when you're there. The things that you're declaring are wonderful and glad tidings. And don't forget that God makes promises to missionary and he keeps them. Such great advice to missionaries. And in these sections, 60 to 62, the Lord also teaches that there are some things that matter and some things that really don't. You get that phrase 3 times in these sections. Here's some things that matters to the Lord. And he says, this matters. It matters that you get on your way in your journey. And in section 61, that you make haste to fulfill your mission. And in 62, it matters that you're faithful. It matters that you share your testimony of the gospel. It matters that you help the saints gather. And what are some things that didn't matter? Well, they're arguing about how do we get there? Do we get there in canoes? Do we get there in coach? How do we get there? And you know what? The Lord repeats twice in section 60. It doesn't matter how you get there. You want to take a canoe? Great. You want to go by horse or mule? Great. Today, 61, again, that doesn't really matter. But some things that also doesn't matter in 62, that they all go together in one big group or 2 by 2. You decide how you're going to do that. It doesn't matter, once again, if you're riding horses or mules or chariots. Some things in life I don't think God really cares about. Elder Oaks gave that counsel when he said, no answer is likely to come to a person who seeks guidance in choosing between 2 alternatives that are equally acceptable to the Lord. Thus, there are times when we can serve productively in 2 different fields of labor. Either answer is right. Similarly, the Spirit of the Lord is not likely to give us revelations on matters that are trivial. I once heard a young woman in a testimony meeting praise the spirituality of her husband, indicating that he submitted to every question to the Lord. She told how he accompanied her shopping and would even choose between 2 different brands of canned vegetables without making his selection a matter of prayer. That strikes me as improper. I believe the Lord expects us to use the intelligence and experience he has given us to make these kind of choices. When a member asked the prophet Joseph Smith for advice on a particular matter, the prophet stated, it is a great thing to inquire at the hands of God, or to come into his presence, and we feel fearful to approach him on subjects that are of little of no consequence. Some things matter, and spend time with what matters most. Now, as these missionaries are traveling, they are on the fishing river. And they're on canoes, and as they camp, they have wild turkey. He's got a picture, wild turkey for dinner, and it was delicious. And then things kind of turn south. There's a spirit of animosity. As Oliver Cowdery said, the conduct of elders became very displeasing. And he prophesies, as the Lord liveth, if you do not behave better, some accident will befall us. And at some point, W. Phelps sees the destroyer in power riding on the face of the waters. Though how he saw that, we really don't know. That contention goes through the next day, and Joseph is frustrated. Some of the elders refuse even to paddle their oars. One of the canoes, it almost hits a submerged tree, and it nearly capsizes. And you just picture all these missionaries together, getting on each other's nerves. Joseph urges caution at this point. Let's just get off the river. And some start calling Joseph a coward because he's not willing to kind of brave the dangers on the river. They get to McClellan's Bend, which is now Miami, Missouri, and they camp. And there are some people that are just kind of griping about Oliver's rebuke. And they're wrong and they know it, but they're being a little defensive. And some people are criticizing Joseph. They're saying, you're being, quote, quite dictatorial. That resonates with me for some reason today. The council went on for some hours as they're chatting. And at that time, Joseph receives section 61 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Well, it's the next morning after prayer, he receives section 61. The brethren, while encamped on McLean's Bend on Missouri, beheld the power of the destroyer as he rode up on the storm, said Joseph Fielding Smith. One of that number saw him in all his fearful majesty, and the Lord revealed to the entire group something of the power of this evil personage. It may seem strange to us, but it is a fact that Satan exercises domain and has some control over the elements. Paul speaks of Satan as the prince of the power of the air in Ephesians. The Lord revealed that those brethren, we read that again. The Lord revealed to those brethren some of the power of the diversity of mankind and how he rides upon the storm as a means of affording them protection. They were commanded to use judgment as they traveled upon these waters, and the saints coming to Zion were instructed to travel by land on their way up to Zion. Moreover, notwithstanding the great power of Satan upon the waters, the Lord still held command, and he could protect his people, whether on land or by waters, as they journeyed. And he says that in section 61. Nevertheless, I have suffered that you may bear record. Behold, there are many dangers upon the waters, and more especially hereafter. Verse 5, I, the Lord, have decreed mine anger, many destructions upon the waters. Yea, and especially upon these waters. Nevertheless, all flesh is in mine hand, and he that is faithful among you shall not perish by the waters. God always has control of the waters. There's only the power that Satan has, that the power the Lord allows him to have, but God is in control. President Smith said, in the beginning the Lord blessed the waters and cursed the land, but in these last days this was reversed. The land was to be blessed and the waters to be cursed. A little reflection will bear witness to this truth of this declaration. In the early millenniums of this earth's history, men did not understand the composition of the soils and how they needed building up when crops were taken from them. It's not a matter of dispute, but the matter of cultivation did not lend itself to abundant production which we're receiving today. In those early periods, we have every reason to believe that torrents and floods and dangers upon the waters were not as great as they are today, and by no means as great as what the Lord promised us. We have seen dangers upon the waters increase until the hearts of men failed them, and only the brave and those who were compelled to travel the seas ventured out upon them. In regard to the Missouri-Mississippi waters, we have seen year by year great destruction come upon them, and coming from them. Millions upon millions of dollars almost annually are lost by this great stream overflowing its banks. Many have lost their lives in the sea floods as they sweep over the land, and even among this apparently tranquil or sluggish stream there can rise storms that bring destruction. Verily, the word of the Lord has been and is being fulfilled in relation to those waters. While the Lord has spoken of the sea heaving itself beyond its bounds, and the waves roaring, yet we must include the great destruction upon the waters by means of war, and especially by submarine warfare, as we have learned it in recent years. Now, the counsel to travel on the water was addressed to missionaries in the 1830s. It's to help them at that time avoid the dangers they face. But think about it. Why haven't our missionaries got that same counsel? Now, they do get the counsel, don't go swimming, and a lot just to protect them so they don't drown. But we don't have this advice today. But think about what the Lord has told us that's dangerous to us today. It's not traveling on the water per se, but there are some things that are spiritually dangerous to our souls. President Smith also said, it is a division line well refined that separates the Lord's territory from Lucifer's. If we live on the Lord's side of the line, Lucifer cannot come there to influence us, but if we cross the line into his territory, we are in his power. By keeping the commandments of the Lord, we are safe on his side of the line. But if we disobey his teachings, we voluntarily cross into the zone of temptation and invite the destruction that is ever present there, knowing this, how anxious we should always be to live on the Lord's side of the line. President Hinckley added, there is a line which you must not cross. It is a line that separates personal cleanliness from sin. I need not get clinical in telling you where that line is. You know. You've been told again and again. You have a conscience within you. Stay on the Lord's side of the line. There is never danger in being on the Lord's side, but it's always dangerous to approach Satan's side and say there's no harm in going just maybe 1 foot over into his side. Now, just some teaching thoughts. You could start and kind of an introduction, maybe ask your family, come prepared to share some advice that you'd give to a missionary who's about to leave on the mission. And then, then compare, here's what the Lord has shared with us in these sections. But maybe one of the great focuses for me in these sections is there are some things that matter. And what's going to matter the most today, and what matters not? Are some of the things that matter not, are you going to leave them out of your life, and are you going to focus on this week what matters most? I hope you have a great week, that you spend your time on what matters most, and you give your family and friends a hug. Have a great day. Bye.